Next stop on your must-do list in Anchorage is, well, the Anchorage Museum. This area is quite fitting because when we checked in, there was a sheet at Avis that said, "Caution, scientists predict the possibility of a volcano erupting is pretty high." I just made it work, right? So behind me is a pig. They run these pigs through the Alaska pipeline to keep the pipeline clean so it doesn't build up sludge and things like that. But it's pretty cool because they'll shoot them up from the top of the pipeline up in Prudhoe Bay, and they come down in Anchorage or in Valdez. These are all the different corporations they have here in Alaska. Depending on what corporation the tribe belongs to, they get different dividends. Some of them will be thousands of dollars, some are only a couple $100s. So this wing right here says, after the German army invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt pushed Congress to pass the Lend-Lease Act, allowing the U.S. to provide allied nations with wartime supplies, including airplanes. That field, which is at Fort Wainwright in Fairbanks, was a strategic delivering point. The red star on the wing indicates this fighter was shipped from Alaska and became property of the Soviet Air Force, and that American pilots delivered almost 8,000 planes between 1942 and 1944 when the program ended. So this machine was created in 1903. It uses a vertical wheel to convey salmon past gutting knives and cleaning attachments in preparation for canning. It was created by Edwin Smith, and he originally called it the iron chink, a crude reference to the Chinese cannery workers it would replace. On its first day, it cleaned 22,000 fish in 9 hours, or about 40 fish per minute, revolutionizing the commercial salmon industry and forcing many to search for a new line of work. Well, that concludes our time at the Anchorage Museum. I think the second floor was like my favorite. It was really cool to see all the traditional garb from all of the different types of villages here in Alaska. All the cool tools, like right down to making canoes and stuff. So it's really cool. So if you're here, it's got a lot of activities for kids. Like the first floor is basically like a kid's floor. So they can go do all these different experiments and stuff like that. So really cool time. And if you come on the third Thursday of the month, it's only $5. So if you have any questions about the museum, let me know. And as always, I appreciate you hitting that like and subscribe button. Until next time, I'll see you next trip.